is Leslie Harris, and I'm Marianne Wilburn, and you are listening to The Garden Mixer.
Cheers. Hi,
Hello,
Marianne.
Leslie. Hey.
Oh my gosh, my day got away from me. I didn't have any time to make a drink or get a workout or get a shower after that workout. So I guess since I didn't get a workout, that's not a big deal. But I'm just sipping on some Chardonnay. What about you?
Gin and tonic today, I think, since we're going to be having Erin on, Erin Schanen from The Impatient Gardener, or as The Impatient Gardener.
She is the impatient gardener.
Yeah, she is the Impatient Gardener. And I know she likes a good G&T, but I don't know what she's going to bring to the episode today.
I'm going to shoot her a text and
I
just
think
say,
you need to
don't
just
come
let her know that,
empty-handed.
yeah, that's almost sort of coercion.
I wonder if she's
Yeah.
doing like dry January and she's got 2 days to go and we're going to ruin it for her. I'm sending this text. It says, don't come empty-handed. This is an alcoholic podcast. We water our plants and we water ourselves. I just want to say that we have a few things to clear up in Clear Up Corner, but not too many, I think.
No, once again, absolute perfection as episodes go.
Not sure we should go that far.
But one thing that I did want to say is that talking about alfalfa seeds and sprouters sent me back to the internet to look for some links for listeners. And I found that since I bought mine in 1931, there are so many options out there. And the mason jar, which is really, if I'm being honest, the mason jar is really my favorite. But the mason jar has been improved with some of these lids that you can find. So I wanted to say to listeners, if you're going to buy an alfalfa sprouter, get one that has these nifty little upside down stands. It's just a little tiny wire thing that you can just have it in there and it's upside down. It's great. Do that. And because I would love to have mine sitting on a stand and I'll probably buy one. I think that's money well spent. So that was something I wanted to clear up.
Stand for sprouts. Okay. They're elevated. They can flip around like Olga Corbett, just on that balance beam thing or whatever she was slipping around on it. It's too bad that when you narrow your eyes like that and look at me like I'm a lunatic, no one could see it. It's such a waste of the drama.
I'm sure you'll clip it for Instagram, so I'm sure they will.
I might.
The other thing, we were sort of going back and forth when we took a listener comment last time from Sarah in Washington. She was talking about battling mustard weed, and you and I said, "What's mustard weed? What's mustard weed?" And it turns out in Washington, that's referring to garlic mustard, which
and we probably should have known
with.
that. Yeah, because that's around here. Yeah, because those common names, although the Latin gets to the bottom of the case more quickly, usually more easily, the common names are good to know, and
it does get to the bottom of the story or the bottom of the case. Now, I have a funny story about that, which you are not going to find funny because you'll fall asleep, but I'm going to tell it anyway.
I'm ready to be not amused. I'm ready.
It is about wild garlic. What is it now? Garlic mustard. And I was taking a tour. I was guiding a tour to the UK back in 2018, I think, or 19. And we were walking through a garden and we walked through a couple gardens and I noticed that garlic mustard was almost showcased in some of the beds. Like at first I thought that they weren't pulling it out accidentally. And then I realized, no, it's in there and it's sort of meant to be in there. So I asked the head gardener when I talked to him, so what about this garlic mustard that's in the beds? And he said, oh yeah, we try and get rid of it, but it's there. And we went back and forth about this weed. And I swear we were talking for about 7 or 8 minutes. And he says something about, but the problem is, it's these little bulbs, really hard to dig. And I went, whoa, wait a minute. Little bulbs, that's not garlic mustard. And he said, yes, they're bulbs. And I said, what are you talking about? Can you show me? And he walks me up to this big area in the woods. And it turns out that he was talking about Allium ursinum, which is their wild garlic, or it's sort of their Ramsons. Ours is, I think, I wrote it down. It's trichocum. That'll be a Clear Up Corner next time.
Can't wait.
That's our ramps. But theirs is Allium ursinum. And I said, "Oh no, 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 that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about that." And I point over at this garlic mustard and he goes, "Oh no, no, that's Jack by the Hedge."
That's a great common
Like,
name.
oh my God. So I mean, I could have been talking to him for 10 minutes about something of importance. And instead, we're going back and forth on this stuff. If I just said, and he'd known, Aliaria petiolata.
Okay.
Actually, speaking of which, I have a new microphone.
Do you
And
now?
I want you to tell me
Actually,
if
it's
you're
been
hearing this.
heralded on Instagram because I thought it was so cute. For a minute, you sent me the photograph of the setup, and I thought you had actually attached it to your, what was that? An agave?
My bromelia, that's my
Your bromeliad.
Alcantaria odorata.
And I thought, "Oh, that's how she hooks up her microphone. How interesting." But it's actually just sitting next to it. It's still a charming photograph that now has disappeared because I put it on the story and that just disappears.
That's where it needed to be. I as I was setting this all up, and it's actually rubbing against this beautiful specimen, and I was getting more and more irritated and thinking this just doesn't need to be here, and why am I doing this anyway, and on and on. Um, in any case, I thought we needed better sound, or I needed better sound. So I'm going to test that sound now. Are you ready? I'm going to give you some words: rich, luscious, naughty words.
I am a married woman. I'm not quite sure what you're
I
going for
know.
here.
All right, I want to see if the sound is as good as I think it is. Are you ready?
I guess.
Amorphophallus. Ready for the next one? Pinus rigida. Oh my God, that makes me laugh. Come on. Listeners, is the sound as good as I think it is? Mammillaria. That's a good one. And lastly, clitoria, which I actually grow, clitoria
What is clitoria?
ternatia. It is a very beautiful vine with absolutely indigo blue flowers.
Mm.
I think it's called the butterfly pea vine or the pea butterfly vine. But the reason it's called clitoria is because it looks
Like that?
like
That.
that. But it's very elegant. And as I once said in a talk, I think I was giving it at Scott's Plant Trials Day, that we should all aim to have an elegant clitoria. So the last one is Lobelia syphilitica, which
Well,
is
that
what you
kind of
get.
takes all the
Yeah.
fun away.
I know. I thought I'd just bring it back down to don't
Okay.
fool around,
Yeah, because
There's
these
things
things
out
could
there.
happen. Yeah.
So hopefully the sound in those things was incredibly rich as I said those words.
Incredibly rich. So clearly you are enjoying your new microphone.
I am. Well, I am very much enjoying not having to hold it in front of me. That's very good. The last bit of clear up corner, clear out corner.
Marie Kondo, this corner.
That's right. I just for the record want to, because you gave me such a hard time about Z versus Z, and I always say Z,
No,
and
I
you
beg to differ. I'm just gonna put a break on it right now. Did I give you a hard time, or did I just mention that it might be not what most Americans say? Because I'm pretty sure it's the latter, is what I did.
All right, Leslie. Well, speaking of what most Americans say, let's go back to the word aunt or and, because according to those in the know, 75% of Americans say and it's just the Northeasterners who say aunt. And they're all stuck up snobby,
Are they
all you
now?
Northeasterners. Yeah,
Really?
well,
So are we unseeing the fact that there's a you sitting there? Like
um, yeah,
taunt,
we're not
vaunt?
seeing it. Like subtle.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
where's
there are
that
silent
B when you need
letters.
it?
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah. Okay.
gnome. Yes, I take it back to all my friends in the Northeast. You are many and varied and wonderful and not snobbish at all. It's just the people I don't know.
I grew up in Alexandria. I had aunties and aunts.
Oh, I have aunties. I just don't have aunts. I would actually start laughing if I went, "Oh, Aunt Jockey, please pass me the lemonade. Please pass me the lemonade." Yes. I'd have a hard time with that. So now that we've established that you're as big of a snob as I am,
Hmm.
um, is there anything else that you'd like to clear up from last time?
I'd like to talk about my Lomi for a moment.
Oh, God. Okay. Sure. Although I will say on Instagram, you showed me the little fluff of, and,
Yeah,
and I actually am impressed. I looked at that, but that's not possible.
it's possible. Tea bags. coffee grinds, avocado rinds, banana peels, disgusting lettuce, the bottoms of celery. Oh my gosh, all that stuff. When I made my bone broth, I followed Marianne's recipe that you could find, listener, on Substack, the Garden Mixer Substack. I followed that recipe. I'm not quite sure if I like what I made, but I did follow the recipe. The only thing I didn't have was bay leaves, and I didn't have apple cider vinegar, but I used persimmon vinegar. I have no idea why I had that, but I did. I thought that's a fruit, that's a vinegar. We're doing it.
I guess that's a good way to get to use stuff in the cupboard. You did not like what you came up with?
I haven't tasted it yet, so the jury's still out on that. Jury is not out on the Lomi. I'm so excited to put disgusting things not into my garbage and into this little pail. And the next morning, it's this fluffy brown stuff that looks like beautiful compost. I wish we had a sponsor, but if we had a sponsor, it might be them.
Yes, I was just going to say, listeners, hashtag not an ad. So thank you, Leslie. But let's forget about that for a minute and go back to the broth. What'd you do wrong? What do you mean you didn't taste it?
I salted it plenty. It's in the phase where it's sitting in my fridge, and it's supposed to have that layer of fat that I'm supposed to skim off. That's where I am, but I haven't. I had a busy day, so the fat stays. It remains untasted, and right now I'm drinking Chardonnay. So sorry.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll let it go. And I have high hopes for your bone broth.
2 trips to lightly touch on one, Cornwall. If you didn't sign up, you're not going because it's all full.
That's right. It's sold out so quickly and wonderfully, but then made me sad. Like, oh gosh, there's a lot of people who want to come and they had to go on wait lists. And
so, but I mean, that's great. So we'll wait for the next one that Horticultural puts together, which is
yes,
you're not going to Cornwall with them unless you already did sign up. And if you did, I can't wait to meet you. Also, Marianne is going to go to England on Saturday for 2 weeks, including a symposium at Great Dixter. So we cannot wait to hear all about that. And might you, just like some sort of foreign correspondent, might you actually get in touch with us while you're away?
I absolutely will. In fact, I am hoping to see Ernie well while I'm there and we can talk.
Oh, wouldn't that be great?
And maybe he can talk to you. I don't know. We'll see. I'm not great with technology, but I'm really looking forward to it because I'm going down to visit some friends, to also meet some colleagues that I only know through Instagram in Somerset and go see some snowdrop displays there and then go back to Dixter for the pruning seminar, which I tried to get Erin to go on with me. And she ruthlessly said, I've got better things to do.
Me too. My golly. I mean,
well, you're just shallow because you didn't want to be cold. But Erin, I know, knows
Erin
how to
is
be
tougher
cold.
than I. She lives in Wisconsin. It's true. Hey, Erin's here. Let's get this going.
We should introduce her. Yeah.
We need her on the show. Hi, Erin.
Hey there.
Guys.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. Very good. For listeners who don't know, and who are you because you need to know, Erin Schanen is the Impatient Gardener, and she gardens in southeast Wisconsin. She has, for a long time now, it's wonderful how much honesty, humor, and real, proven, hands-on horticultural experience that she gives to us on Instagram, YouTube, and any other media platform that she can explain to us. She has been on this podcast before when it was just mine. And actually, I think last summer, I had Erin on the podcast and I sent Marianne the Zoom link and said, just interrupt us. It'll be fun. Marianne's like, what?
It was fun.
It was fun. Thank you for coming. Welcome back.
Oh, listen, I'm happy to be back with you two ladies anytime you'll have me.
Good. Cheers. Do you have a little cocktail going on?
Absolutely. I certainly do. Cheers.
Cheers.
What is it, Erin?
This is just a Sauvignon Blanc. It was what could get in the glass quickest.
You were on the Leslie team today. I got a gin and tonic precisely because I thought, well, Erin will have a gin and tonic and Leslie will have a gin and tonic. And then Leslie was like, there was no time. I just grabbed a glass of wine.
That was exactly the same thing that happened with me. If I'd had a little bit more time, I would definitely be sporting that gin and tonic.
Erin, I just have a couple questions before we want to get actually into really some good information on seeds. And that's when I'll sort of doze off because I've never understood the magic.
Really? Thanks for coming, Erin.
No.
Really selling it there, Leslie.
No, it's just that these two ladies, Marianne and Erin, are real gardeners. And I'm kind of like, especially now that I've moved away from my big garden, I'm kind of an imposter. Um, so I will only doze off because of my lack of inspiration. But actually, I am totally inspired by them, and I want to learn from them. But I'm not the one to run the questions here. But I do have a question, just as I was like, you know, looking you up today, just to make sure I'm not going to mess this up, right? That like this is her basic bio. I have two questions that I would love for you to use to tell listeners a little bit more about yourself because they're kind of general. When you got that first handle, the impatient gardener, it said on your website that it's because you were impatient. You wanted this garden to be finished. You wanted things to grow. How do you feel about that handle now? Is your level of patience changed over the years?
Um, First of all, I apologize for what you hear as barking in the background. I am only I'm a few months and many pounds ahead of Marianne in the puppyhood stage. So I apologize for the barking. I have no control. So how do I feel about that? I am still extraordinarily impatient.
And honest.
Maybe I have more understanding for it. And I know that this is a ridiculous thing to be as an impatient gardener. However, one of the things that I did to counteract that impatience over the years was I just kept creating new gardens. So rather than stare at the, one or two gardens that weren't finished, sort of like watching paint dry or, watching water boil, I just started making new gardens. And so these days I am still as impatient as I was. However, I have more than enough, too much, in fact, to keep myself busy that I don't have a lot of time to dwell on that because there's somewhere else to be dealt with because I spent a lot of years making a lot of gardens.
So the handle still works.
Oh,
Sounds like.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. All
And
right.
Erin, do you ever feel like you want to just write under your own name too? Because I had this issue many, many years ago because I started out as small town gardener because that was the column that I wrote. And over time, with more writing, I was feeling like, oh, I just want to do this under my own name. But I never, ever had an Instagram presence or social media presence like you do. So it wasn't as much to give up if I wanted to do that. And so I could just do it with my 3 followers. And I just had to write to them individually using a stamp. But unfortunately, they'd all died. So So it really wasn't a big deal, but for you, it would be. Do you ever think about that?
For many years, I kind of went out of my way to just be kind of an anonymous Erin, the impatient gardener. And then when Nick McCullough and Allison McCullough and Teresa Woodward wrote the book, American Roots, and my garden was featured in there, I kind of got outed as Erin Schanen. And it wasn't that I was hiding it. It just seemed like a complication. And so since then, I've been doing more things. My full name is on my Instagram now. So I've sort of started that transition to a certain extent. And as I'm fortunate enough to be doing a little bit more writing, garden writing for other outlets, that's where it's nice to, I've been sort of transitioning into that a little bit more. But you're right, it is a bit of a situation that we create for ourselves sometimes.
Tell us about your garden writing. What do you have a weekly column now, and what else?
So I have a weekly newspaper column, which is published in our local community newspaper. And I've been doing that for like 2.5 or 3 years now, long enough to know that I've written 52 columns a year
that's a
it's
lot.
real hard to not start repeating things.
Oh, yeah.
So that's a lot. And it's 500 words and no room for pictures, which is an interesting brief. So I do that. And fortunately, I've been doing a few little things here and there for Fine Gardening magazine lately, which has been
Nice.
really fun. In fact, I just got a copy mailed to me, so there must be something in there that I wrote in that issue, which is really exciting and very fun. So that's what I've been doing, which is great because a writing is where I started.
You wrote for a sailing magazine.
Yeah, and actually, and prior to that, I worked at various newspapers. So I went to school for journalism, and so I've been writing forever. And that's really that's what I love to do. And then I switched to YouTube. Like the Impatient Gardener was a blog for eons, and it still exists there, although it is woefully ignored really for lack of time, honestly, which is a little bit sad. But everything kind of shifted to video. And so I went with that. I'm like, everyone's going to video. If that's where people are to find out about gardening, I'll go to video. So much of my time is spent doing video stuff for YouTube and whatever the social media accompaniment to that is on Instagram, etc. I'm very happy to have the writing outlet. It will forever be where my heart lies.
Marianne, would you like to comment on that? You writer, you?
Not at all. I mean, I'm right with you on that. I just rejected video. That was my problem.
Right.
No, honestly, it's not that I reject video. I think video is fantastic, but it is a lot of work to do, get right, upload. And I'm in awe of the amount of work that you do and get up there and so professionally.
Well, I don't know what professionally, but I try. The side of it that you don't realize when you start doing that is the editing. It just takes forever.
Do you do that yourself?
I do.
Oh,
I do.
My goodness.
I do my own editing. For better or for worse, I do my own editing. I did try to have someone else do my editing and that didn't work out so well. I would like to find someone else to do my editing, but I am extraordinarily fussy about things to my own detriment. I don't willfully give up control of creative things very well. So it's a personal problem I should probably see a therapist for.
And I'd like their number when you're
right. Maybe we can get a group discount.
Maybe we could.
So you aim your first video at YouTube, but then you transfer it to Instagram. Is that correct? I hope that you use the same content for over various platforms. No, she's shaking her head. Okay, she really is a glutton for punishment.
I am a glutton for punishment. I do on occasion, but not often. I am not one of those people who has mastered that whole idea of shoot one piece of content and use it in 10 different places. Because honestly, by the time I've already edited a YouTube video and put it up, I'm like ready to move on to something. I'm bored with it. I'm ready to move on to something else.
Impatient.
Right. I am impatient.
So if people want to see the kind of longer term real gardening gems, are your longest videos there for them on YouTube? Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. The Impatient Gardener on YouTube, and real instruction, pruning, design, ideas, dogs, everything, right?
Yeah, I try to shake it up a little bit. I mean, sometimes it's, especially this time of year, sometimes it's just about like, what is there to do in the garden right now? Well, I want to do my own thing. First of all, there's a lot of people doing gardening stuff on YouTube now. And I'm like, there are people who are really good at that, and we're going to let them do that. So like the video that I'm editing right now is like, okay, here's a pretty typical winter weekend in the garden for me. Like, what are the garden things that I'm doing at this time of year in southeastern Wisconsin, where the ground is frozen hard and there's not like a lot to be doing.
So can you share that? Because that was like my second big question. Like, what the heck? What are you doing in 6A right now? It's January 29th, listeners. And I'm just wondering, because me in our extreme, as Marianne says, weather in Virginia,
extreme enough.
Extreme enough for the California girl. So I've got this new tiny garden, and it just happens to have most of its exposure in the shade right now because the sun is so low. And I'm literally editing our latest podcast and then going out with my chipper and chipping ice away. This is Virginia. It's melting all over the place. It's just, I'm impatient too. It's not melting fast enough for me. What the heck do you do this time of year as a gardener?
So here's some of the things I've been up to lately. Some of it is just checking in on little things. So I overwinter, not a lot, but some shrubs in my unheated garage. And so about once a month I go out there, and even though they're frozen solid in there, I put a little bit of water on there to make sure things aren't totally drying out. I had to do my first check on all my dahlia tubers.
Oh,
as you may or may not know, I have an absurd addiction to dahlias, which means I've got just oodles of tubers being stored in a cold, dark spot in my basement. But about once a month, I need to go down there and check on them and make sure that nothing has gone awry down there. So that's one of the things I did. I've got various other things. Thanks very much to Marianne's book, which has been, honestly, Marianne's book is responsible for the fact that a good portion of parts of our basement are like tropical plants in winter storage and nobody,
inaccessible for tools, cooler, other Christmas stuff.
right. God forbid we have like a well pump issue. There's no getting to it without moving out a lot of tropical plants that are being
You're
stored in this
welcome.
room. Yeah, thank you very much. My husband is really, really appreciative of that, by the way. So checking on those kinds of things. And then pruning, such a good time to be pruning. And actually, we have zero snow cover right now, which is not good for, it's nothing. We have actually had the driest January ever in the history since records have been kept. We have gotten 0.15 inches of precipitation in southeastern Wisconsin in January. I would like some snow in terms of plant health. On the other hand, it is a little bit convenient for getting around and doing a lot of shrub pruning and tree pruning and stuff.
And getting that out of the way, even with things like, Marianne, don't forget your question, but I will forget mine, so I'm just going to butt right it in line in front of you. When you go to prune, I know you're a big fan of the chop and drop, and when you go to prune shrubs, so you have some fairly thick limbs, are you chopping and dropping that, or are you setting those aside?
No, I have a dead hedge. And I love my dead hedge.
Oh, I love the dead hedge. I'm
not sure my dead hedge is a great work of art. It's my first one and I'm perfecting it. But I love that dead hedge. So pruning I think I'm actually pruning more because I'm like, have a really good spot to be putting all those pruning clippings and perfecting my little dead hedge corner.
All your plants will be about 6 inches tall, but you'll have a killer dead hedge.
Have a great dead hedge.
Well, that's super motivating for any type of work where it's going to go somewhere. Like, for instance, my weeding for my chickens, huge motivating factor in the wintertime. And I have and you're going to hear my dogs in just a second. So I apologize. I have those habitat nests out in the woods, and nothing makes me happier than to pick up sticks for those. But if I didn't have those, I hate picking up sticks. I don't want to pick up sticks.
But you're adding to an artwork. So tell them quickly what that habitat nest is.
Well, it's very much like your dead hedge, really. It's
in
just
a circle.
in a very large sort of dinosaur Jurassic looking what is living in their nest. And they're dotted throughout the sunken woods area, and they need to be constantly refreshed. And I've always got wood coming down. So I get that of, hey, I'm just going to put this over here and I've got more stuff to put on it. And that's a great motivating factor.
Before I moved away from my bigger property, I was building a boat made out of dead. So something would come down. I'm like, I will put this on my boat. And I had one grandchild come and visit at one stage. And I said, hey, Chip, look at this stack of sticks here. Can you identify what this might be? And he said, is that a boat, Lulu? And I said, yes, it is. So even though I moved away and even though it wasn't a very good boat, I had that moment. I won't forget it.
And you'll never do it again.
I'll never, because I live in the tiniest garden in the world.
Put that right in your front yard and let the HOA have at it.
The HOA would be so excited about that. You had a question about, 10, 12 minutes ago, Marianne, for Erin.
Yes, but my mind is as sharp as a tack, Leslie. So
okay, good, go.
I'll be able to do it. It was more of a comment. You're having a very, very dry winter. We're having a very wet winter. A lot of snow, more than we have had in a while. Besides the snowmageddon of 2013, 2014. But I was thinking, well, at least everything's protected.
Yeah.
Even though I can't work in it easily. Yeah. And the deer are enjoying it. Deer are enjoying my lack of energy out there right now and taking advantage. So, and I don't really have any words to to say how much that makes me angry and homicidal. I'm sure you deal with deer too.
Yeah, we of course we deal with deer terribly, but I was just noticing I did some deer repellent spreading. As a matter of fact, that was part of my weekend activity. And it's interesting, the deer activity is not as bad as it is in a normal winter because since there's no snow on the ground and no snow cover, there's plenty of places for them to go be eating things. So they're not necessarily coming to my garden to eat things. They don't have to travel very far to go find a little bit of food to eat.
What's a good deer product for you?
Gosh, listen, I've tried them all. The one that I did this past weekend was deer scram because I like to use a granular in winter. Partly because it's easier to spread, but also I don't love the idea of spraying a product on frozen leaves and frozen stems and stuff. It's unpleasant
Yeah.
to apply, and I worry a little bit about that. So that deer scram seems to be a fairly good granular product, but I try all of them. I try
Yeah.
all of them, and I don't know. I mean, everything seems to work for at least 10 days.
And then you have to switch. With the granular, though, I always used to have to be careful using the granular on clients' properties if they had dogs, so the Newfoundlands don't get into it. I guess there's dried blood there.
There is, and a certain 7-month-old puppy immediately was following me around. So he does not seem to be interested anymore. But immediately after I spread it, I'm like, oh, he better stay inside for a while.
Well, so let's move on to seeds. And so I can just take a little nap and you guys can go.
So, Leslie, what you may not know, I don't know if you do know or not, but Erin and I go way back, way before you and her. So we're like better friends.
Okay, fine. Erin and I have a history. I have never stood in the same room with her.
Yeah.
And yet I'm a huge fan. And she has been on the podcast several times. You all have had a road trip together, right?
We had a road trip. That's when we met. Do you remember that trip, Erin?
Oh, that was so much fun. That was a blast.
It was, and we went to, thanks to Diane Blasek and Gail Pabst at the National Garden Bureau, which is All America Selections, and they're sort of the consumer reports of gardening, I think is the best way to think about them. And they invited us and 4 other garden writers to be on the California Spring Trials field trip, the Plant Nerd field trip. And so we went down the state of California, going and looking at all of these new plants that were new to market that year or the next year. And also along the way, really learning about the industry. I don't know about you, but it was just mind blowing to me how these connections between growers and breeders and distributors and producers and brands and all of that, how that all works together. Were you like I was?
Oh, it was so eye-opening. I would have had no idea. I mean, there was no other place I ever would have probably learned that information and about how all those things work, and these bizarre kind of things that go into, I mean, I guess as a consumer of plants, I think, oh, the main thing with plants mostly is is it pretty? Do we want it in our gardens? Is it sellable? But there's so much more that goes into is it small enough to fit on a rack? Do we have to do PGRs, growth hormone regulators to keep it from getting too big so it can be shipped on a rack? How quickly does it grow? I mean, these are all things that maybe on some level I kind of knew were out there, but I didn't fully understand how that was all a big web as to what really goes into whether a consumer is ever going to see a plant or not.
Yeah, because a lot of those plants may not actually be picked up by the big boxes, what they're going to buy and not. And it was just eye-opening, and we were wined and dined. It was a fabulous trip, and I will always be indebted to Diane and Gail for that. I remember Erin, Leslie, we were winding our way through either Watsonville or some other place, and she said, "Is it really this beautiful all the time?" And I'm like, yeah, it is. Damn them. It really is this beautiful here.
And now you live in the extreme climate of Virginia.
And now I'm in extreme Virginia. Although I did say that we really were there at the perfect time, which is sort of March, April, where everything is green, and those golden hills of California are not golden yet. They're just green. And you might even have the super bloom. You might have all of the wildflowers. But we are talking about seeds.
You're finished making me jealous about your friendship with Erin, so now we can go on to
seeds.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we shared a room together. One night, but still a magical night.
One magical night.
Yeah. And I remember. So it's reminding me of something else. Is that Erin was watching, you were watching Monty Don on BBC Gardener's World, I remember, on your phone, or, just in the end of the evening.
Yeah.
And up until that point, I had never, because we didn't have good streaming service. We live in the boondocks, and I knew Monty Don from his writing, his books. So Leslie and I have talked about this before, and I'd be like, yeah, I know he does the show, but I never see it. And Erin was watching it, and I was sort of listening to a little bit of it, and I thought, I really should start watching that. And since then I've watched a lot more of it. Anyway, thank you for, bringing me on to Monty.
There you go.
So today we're going to talk about ornamentals from seed. I'm not going to go into veg today because I think that a lot of people focus on vegetables when they think about starting from seed. And I know person I know who does ornamentals from seed the most, it would be you, just based on Instagram. Besides, obviously ball seed does a lot from seed too.
Right.
A lot.
They do a lot. Yeah. But you really populate your garden with these beautiful flowers, most of which, all of which you grow from seed?
Not all of which, but many of which. Yeah, many of which I grow from seed. Yep.
And do you do that because of choice of what you want to grow, or because you want it when you want it, or because there's nothing available around you, or cost, or why?
It's a little bit of a combination of that, but the primary reason is that most of the stuff I'm growing from seed, you cannot go buy anywhere. If you want it, you're going to have to grow from seed. And my sort of gateway drug to growing ornamentals from seed was sweet peas. And it's really funny. I didn't even really understand. I mean, this was pretty early in my kind of gardening journey, but I didn't even really understand what sweet peas were. And I don't even know where I saw them, but I smelled them. And you know how they say the olfactory senses are the most powerful. And it was like the biggest rush of deja vu. I didn't really know to where, but I'm like, I have smelled this before and it was amazing. And I kind of suspect it was maybe from like my grandma's garden or something. And I smelled that and I went, I want those. And then I started, really, we're talking like newbie gardener here. So then I started going to garden centers. Well, where are the sweet peas? Well, we don't sell those. And so I realized if you want, now there are a few garden centers who will do it, but they're notoriously finicky when it comes to transplanting all those things. And I realized if I wanted that plant, I was going to have to figure out how to grow it myself. And that's how I got started growing flowers from seed. And once I got into that and I kind of figured that out, I realized all these other cool plants are out there and you are never going to go find those in any garden center. So if you want them, your option is to grow them.
What are those for you that are I cannot be without it this year? Besides sweet peas, what are the first three that spring to mind?
Number one is Nicotiana. And when I talk about Nicotiana, I talk about really lovely varieties. I'm not talking about these terrible, pardon me, but these terrible little bedding Nicotianas that are about 8 inches tall. And these are the ones that you can find at the garden center. But there are amazing varieties of Nicotiana. I am very partial to chartreuse in my garden. So that's Nicotiana, a lot of lime green. There is a shorter version of that, which is the Perfume series, which has a lot of color. It's an F1 hybrid. It has a lot of colors in it, but there's a lime green in it that I like, which is more like 20 inches tall versus 30 inches tall. Nicotiana Langsdorffii, which has these beautiful little trumpets. There's one called Chocolate Chip, and it's very similar to another one called Bronze Queen, both of which are beautiful, bronzy, kind of burgundy colored ones. You can't find those anywhere else. And so those are ones that I cannot be without those, and particularly the chartreuse ones. I just have really a thing for chartreuse in the garden, and that's the best chartreuse thing that I grow by far. So that's the first one. Rhodochiton atrosanguineum.
Say that again.
Which is purple bellvine.
Oh, you woke up, Leslie. Good. Glad to have you with us, Les.
Yeah, I just turning over from my nap. But
right.
Say that Latin again because I loved it.
Rhodochiton, I think it's atrosanguineus or atrosanguineum, which is the coolest vine. It's a little bit, as Marianne would say, it's a little bit vulgar at a certain stage in its flowering.
I beg your pardon.
but it's the coolest vine is another. Now you can find plants of that, like Annie's Annuals has sold plants of that before. I don't know what the status of that company is anymore. And Select Seeds actually now sells plants of that, but they're very tiny. But not something that you're going to find in your average everyday local garden center. That is another one that I absolutely love. A little tough to grow from seed, but worth the effort. And then here is a plant that we saw on that trip, actually, Marianne, which is pure blue delphinium, which was Takai seeds. Do you remember that
Yes.
plant?
Oh boy, do I. They were absolutely electric.
It's not a tall spire delphinium, it's a mounded type delphinium. And of course, since I'm addicted to chartreuse flowers, that electric blue, you can't find anything that looks better with it than that electric blue color. So those are just kind of three off the top of my head, but there's many more in there too.
Now you have humidity, I know, right?
Yes, we do have a fair amount of humidity, not a ton, but a fair amount.
Right. And your summers are warm to hot, but not maybe punishingly hot, correct?
Yeah, and I'm in this kind of microclimate since we're so close to Lake Michigan that we don't get that kind of heat that they might get, in the center of Wisconsin or, other parts of the Midwest. So we are a little bit insulated in that. I mean, a 90-degree day is unusual.
Oh, wow. That's very pleasant.
Okay. Because the whole thing about the delphinium and the sweet pea, it's got me drooling a little bit, but my spider mind in the back is going, don't do it, don't do it.
Oh, you don't grow sweet peas at all, Marianne?
I do not grow sweet peas. I had 2 years that I tried them, and we had very hot summers that were hot and fast. So it's something that that didn't burn up, but
it just stopped producing.
Yeah, it's like
even
a
if
pea.
you deadhead them.
It's very similar to a pea. So
yeah.
So I'm in a little bit cooler temperature, I think, is sweet pea haven. I mean, I don't know about the Pacific Northwest, but England they were just doing a unbelievable sweet pea trial at Wisley that I saw. Oh my goodness. I'm sure they've got the results on the internet if you're looking for some new varieties.
I am, and I will check that out.
Yeah. Can I just take this opportunity to talk about something? Because I will contribute less to this conversation, but I have grown sweet peas, so I'm just going to do this. I'm jumping right in.
Oh, awesome. Okay, no, tell me, because I do want to do better. I want to be better.
I don't know if we can do better where we are because of this. We do have these brutal summers.
Extreme climate.
Extreme climate. Oh my God. But here's the deal. When you grow things from seeds, you're supposed to have this epiphany, this moment of like, this is so awesome. I have germinated something. I have control. It's a magical thing that has popped out. That doesn't really happen for me, but it comes closer with something like a sweet pea or a vine, hyacinth bean or moonflower vine or something like that, because it's so big so fast. And probably part of the reason that nurseries don't carry sweet peas is that they would become a tangled mess. I mean, they're happening, and they're happening quickly. So gardeners in Virginia or places where we do have brutal summers, it's not gonna happen all summer for you, but it'll have a nice couple of months. And just to pick a posy of those things and to get that smell, that odor that you refer to, Erin, it's pretty priceless. And for a packet of seeds, pretty cool.
It is. I agree.
I'm almost tempted to do them again this year now. I think I may just.
Here's how I justify this. Every time I think, like, it's a packet of seeds. What is it? $4? It's $4, some of your time and a lot of your heart and soul. And so if you can handle any potential heartbreak that
a little
might
ego
come,
too, tiny bit of ego,
a little bit of ego, but no, it doesn't have to be ego. You can blame that on the weather for sure. You can't control that stuff. It just wasn't the year for it. It's fine. What do you have to lose? $4? Oh, heck, worth it.
Absolutely.
Okay, agreed. I'm trying them.
Even for just half the season that I think sweet peas are supposed to do for Erin and people at Great Dixter and all those people, they're supposed to go on and on and on, right? The only crime is to not deadhead them. That's not quite the way it is for us, but they're still beautiful for a few moments.
My neighbors love it when I go on vacation because the last thing I do before I walk out the door is I pick every single sweet pea that's out there. And they all get big bouquets of sweet peas because you're right, Leslie, that is the cardinal rule. And you have got to stay on top of them. So my neighbors all get beautiful bouquets of flowers and a lot of sweet peas before I leave on vacation.
Well, just like beans and peas, you got to keep them picked.
That's right.
So give me a cultivar. Come on, let's make this real. What am I going to get?
Well, I'm going to tell you right now, one of the sad things that has happened, and I think this is a function of Brexit, is that it's hard to get seeds out of the UK now. And I used to order from places like Owlhead Seeds, and there's some great purveyors of sweet peas that are difficult to get seeds from now. But there are places in the US. I'll just tell you a few of my favorites. There is one called Air One, which is sort of a bicolor, sort of half blue and half pink. That is lovely.
All right, let's keep the pink out of it.
Oh, sorry. I apologize. We can fix that.
Moving swiftly on.
Don't apologize to her. Good Lord.
There's one called Prince of Orange, which is very easy to find.
Nice. I'm liking that.
Bright neon orange, and actually sometimes has these little like blue streaks in it sometimes.
I'm in. Okay, Prince of Orange. Where do I go? Tell me who.
Actually, you can pick that one up at a lot of places. Not uncommon. I've gotten it from Select Seeds before, but I bet you can find it in many places. Mostly I grow blues because it is one of those flowers that you can get some true blues in. And I love a blue flower. I just adore a blue flower. So I do grow a lot of blues. And there's some really interesting, if you don't mind a little fleck, there's one called Harry P that's actually like a purple fleck to it, which is kind of interesting. And some of those Spencer varieties, and I'm not sure if that's a Spencer variety or not, but those Spencer varieties were sort of bred for show. So they're sort of long stems and big flowers. Sometimes you sacrifice a little bit of the scent, but even if you sacrifice a little bit of the scent, they all still have great scent. So you still get some of that. So I kind of grow a mix of them. Like I feel like dahlias with sweet peas, all sweet peas go together in a bouquet. You don't have to separate them. So you just throw them all together in a bouquet and you get some amazing flowers and some really good scent, and it all ends up amazing.
Okay. I pledge to you ladies, I am going to try this year. This is going to happen. Now, do you plant them directly or do you plant them indirectly?
I start them inside and I use root trainers. I used to grow them 3 to a pot in like a tall 4-inch pot. That worked fine too. But then I got fancy and I bought myself some root trainers, and these are sort of sandwich type situations. And I've got some really nice ones that are a little bit hard to find, but it's like a big sandwich thing and it closes up and they're very narrow. They're like 2 inches by maybe 1 inch, but they're 8 inches deep.
Oh, wow.
And so the way I plant those, first of all, I have started pre-sprouting my sweet pea seeds. So I actually start them between the damp paper towel. They sprout, and then I put them into the root trainers because I was getting sick of empty cells, frankly, in those root trainers. Yeah. And then I don't know if you're ever going to find any book that says you should do this, but I have started filling up the root trainers about 3/4 of the way with regular potting mix and 1/4 of the way with seed starting mix. My theory behind this is, the fine little roots when they're starting to germinate, have that nice little loose seed starting mix. And then they need food. Those sweet peas need food pretty quick. So then they get into a little bit of nutrition with a regular potting mix. When I get them out of there, it's a nice skinny, and those roots go all the way through the bottom. And then I plant them out from there.
Oh, fantastic.
That sounds really doable.
That sounds like something Leslie's never going to do.
Yes, but I could admire it. I will admire it. And cheers to you people who will do it.
Yes. Well, if I do get some sweet peas, you could put some sweet peas on because they can scramble over a shrub or something. You don't just have to put them on.
Oh, absolutely.
On a trellis. We forget that sometimes.
Yep. I love a scrambler.
So I am starting with 2 new to me from seed this year, and actually sort of egged on by Diane Blasek at National Garden Bureau, who sent me, and probably you, some antarinum seeds, snapdragons. And I have always felt that snapdragons, they've never really blown my skirt up. I like them, but they've felt very fussy, very old fashioned to me, which should be one of the reasons I love them, but I don't. I've seen yours. That's one of the things that I go, maybe I should. I've seen them in the Ripley Garden down in downtown DC. And I thought, there's some out there that are really pretty. And she sent a couple packets. I brought them up here so I'd remember. Double shot orange bicolor, I think.
Yeah, and I think the other one is like yellow red, something
red
like
heart.
a yellow. I just wrote about it.
And double shot orange bicolor. And I thought, ooh, I could get on board with those if they did well. So I am going to grill Erin to tell me how to do these right and when to start.
So remind me again, you're zone 7, what?
I am 6B, 7A.
Okay, so the reason I ask is because like certainly zone 8 and maybe zone 7B, it's one of those sort of hardy annuals that you can definitely start in fall and plant out. So it's often like, I think a lot of people in that zone sort of start in September and
That's what
then
I do.
plant out seedlings. Yeah, plant out seedlings, and they'll overwinter because they're cold hardy, or some cold hardy. So in warmer zones, that's typically the advice with those. Those of us who don't have that wonderful situation going on. I do have a seed starting spreadsheet,
Look
which I
at
just
you.
update from year to year. Well, it just tells me when I'm supposed to start stuff because I start so many things that I forget. So 12 weeks before frost, my last average frost, is when I start those. And I plant them out basically usually right at my last frost date or often earlier, depending on how the weather's looking. Because they can handle, a light frost, or even if you can put them out, you can just throw a little covering over them or something. But they like it cool. So for me, here in 5B, 6A, mid-February. So those will actually be probably the first seeds that I start this year in mid-February. So you can probably start them anytime in your zone, Marianne.
Yesterday.
Yeah, like yesterday.
Right. They love it cool. They want to grow cool. So which works out well for me. I do most of my seed starting in my basement, which is too cool for some things, but works out quite well for things like that. And for those, I actually rarely put those on a germination mat. They're happy to germinate at a cooler temperature. And I've never noticed that they have any issues with transplanting or anything like that. So one of the ways that I start most of my seeds is I do sort of the communal starting method in a smaller pot, sow some seeds there, and then
Prick them
and
out.
then prick them out and then move them on to other pots. I find that to be such an easy method, but everybody does their own thing. There's so many different ways to start seeds, but cool is the way to go with snapdragons. Cool, good light and cool is the way to go. I've been growing, I'm quite fascinated with the Madame Butterfly series. I really like that one, much like the double shot ones that All America Selections sent us. They have what they sort of refer to as an azalea flower. So when people imagine snapdragons, they often think of the cool little thing you can do with your fingers where they looks like a mouth. These are open flowers, and I think they're quite pretty.
But are they vulgar?
They are not vulgar.
Okay. I just need to make sure, Erin. I just need to make sure.
They're very demure.
Demure.
Before we get into the second one that I really want to do, because I am going to do these, is I think it bears mentioning that you are not doing all of your seed starting out of greenhouse. You are doing it out of your basement, and it's a cold basement.
Yeah.
And I think people need to realize that we don't always get, even when we're garden writers, we don't get to have the perfect conditions and the perfect situation to raise our seeds, but we can make it work. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about your setup?
Yeah, absolutely. This is the seed dungeon. So this is down in my basement. And I have sort of, jury rigged a system that has actually worked really well for me. I've got, those rolling metal racks that you can buy for any sort of storage situation. I've hung lights. I like LED lights, make a big difference. Actually, it just makes it a lot easier. And I do like the LED. There's all sorts of information out there about like LED shop lights. I actually have bought through grow lights, just invested in them, and they work great. And I have a few heat mats that I start things that want it on. And then I have wrapped those two racks entirely in like a mylar fabric.
Oh.
So I maximize my light by having like a reflective mylar thing. It's all on there with duct tape.
That's so cool.
It's very janky looking. And so everything lives down there until mid-April. I set up a very cheap portable greenhouse in my backyard. So this is one of these plastic greenhouses that you've seen. And I set one of those up, and that's where I will do my hardening off. It works very well for hardening off out there. So I will gradually move things out there. I also start my dahlia. I will move dahlia tubers out there and stuff that I've pre-started. That's how I harden everything off to make that process easier. It's all very cobbled together, but it's been working really well for me for many years now.
Before we move on to the next, you want to ask about amaranth? Is that correct?
I want to.
I just have one more snaps question.
Yeah.
So when I moved into this little HOA, and I was like, oh my God, I had 3 azaleas in the front and yards of empty mulch, just brown stuff. So it was September. I went and grabbed some snaps. They overwintered. They look great all spring. They surprised the heck out of me by surviving a Charlottesville summer. What goes on in Wisconsin with your snaps in summer?
See, I'm glad you brought that up because I was actually going to mention that. That's the same thing. So they kind of lull out in the hottest part of summer, and then they make this glorious return in sometime in September, and they bloom for me all the way through a very hard frost. They will bloom through a light frost till we get actually a freeze. I will be able to pick snapdragon flowers, and with that Madame Butterfly series, at least, which is the one I've been really growing quite a bit of lately, you just keep cutting on. I mean, they just keep reblooming. So it's not a one and done. They will just keep pushing out new flowers. And they do this sort of phoenix-like resurrection, as soon as the temperatures cool down enough. And actually, I get some of the best snapdragons flowers in terms of cutting them in fall.
Yeah.
And those are from the same plants that I have planted out sometime, usually in April.
For me, it was like 14 months later. I'm like, whoa, these are the same plants.
Oh, wow. Well,
yeah, because of where I live.
Some of them can be sort of perennial in some areas.
Temperennials,
so,
right, Marianne?
Or short-lived perennials.
They would be that temperennial that they're hardy for some in the right climate, but not hardy for others. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I had some 9-degree nights a couple weeks ago, so nothing's hardy for me right now. It's like all of a sudden my HOA moved to Wisconsin, right next door to Erin, and now we're back to 50-degree days. But OMG.
Yeah, well, hold my beer because it was -1 here, baby. All right, minus freaking one.
Do you see this little mini violin?
Yeah,
that I'm playing for you guys?
Yeah.
No, I have to put up with it with a lot in this extreme climate.
The one that's not California, that one.
That's right. Okay, so the other one is amaranth, and I must confess this was really not on my radar. I've long ago just been like, oh, I don't need to grow amaranth. And then I'm going through the just sumptuous whole seed catalog, which I'm sure you have, Erin, from Baker Creek, which is not as much a seed catalog as it is just a catalog of stories and seeds and people, and then incredible, sumptuous photographs. And if you don't get this catalog, listeners, please do. There's a lot of seed companies out there that are fantastic, but this one is a book that will sit on your shelf, even if you just use it as a reference for very cool seeds. But I'm going through it last night, and I see this incredible amaranth held in the person's arms. That's, just like big bunches of it. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to ask Erin about amaranth and what that's all about, because I'm going to show it to you. Look at that. Can you guys see that? I want to grow that.
Look at that.
I want to grow what he has in his arms. And that is Elena's Rojo, and it's a packet's $3. So I think I'm going to go for that. And there was a chartreuse one as well, which I also ordered, or I'm about to order, called Aurelia's Verde. And I mean, look at this. How do you not want to grow that? Do you see this?
Yeah.
It's like he's holding a Newfoundland in his arms.
It does. I don't know if the guy comes with the stuff in his arms, handing it to you at the end of a long day. It's a gorgeous picture. All right. So tell me about amaranth.
Yeah, so amaranth, exactly the opposite of snapdragon. So amaranth, they want heat. And I have made the mistake on multiple occasions of starting them too early, trying to start them inside, and they will just languish. They will be so unhappy in any sort of cool temperatures. So it's usually only about 4 weeks before you plant them out. And we're talking probably even planting them out in well, for me, it would be June, certainly June. I mean, I don't plant a lot of things. I don't plant tomatoes out usually until the first week of June. But they want heat, and they will get so mad at you if you try to push them into any sort of cool. And so amaranth is a great one to learn patience, because if you think you're going to gain anything by starting it too early, you will find out quickly that you're going to end up just probably tossing what you have and just starting over again. They also generally dislike transplanting. And I do it anyway, by the way. There are very few things that I direct sow. It's almost impossible, actually, in a garden that is as packed as mine is, to try to direct sow something and expect that it's going to get any sort of light that it would need to do anything. But the key is to start them directly into sort of whatever cell tray it's going to stay in until you plant it out, so that you're only moving it once, because they very much dislike disruption. So heat, and you only usually have to start them probably maybe I would say 4 weeks before you expect to plant them out. And they will move quickly for you. Actually, two books that I refer to all the time, just FYI.
This is a book moment with Erin Schanen.
Yeah, this is a book moment with Erin Schanen. First one is this one, and it's not in print anymore, but it is Annuals and Tender Perennials for North American Gardens by Wayne Winterroad. And it's like an encyclopedia, basically. And I did find this on, Amazon as a used version. It's got all the information. So this is sort of like the Bible of how to grow all these things. And then actually the other one is Matt Mattis has a lot of really good information in Mastering the Art of Flower Gardening.
Yeah, that's a great book.
Yeah, those two books are kind of at my fingertips when it comes to trying to figure out what a plant wants when I'm starting it from seed. Both of those are really good references. One thing to know about amaranth is that in most places it will happily reseed for people.
Oh, lovely.
And a lot of the times, if you get some reseeding, they'll usually be much stronger seedlings than the ones that you grow for that year. But of course, there's all sorts of issues, obviously, with reseeding because sometimes they don't pop up where you want them.
Right.
Sometimes they are bigger than you want them. And for me, anything that might reseed is always bigger than the plant, that I grew in a cell tray or something the year before. But amaranth is the most amazing addition to any bouquet you're going to make. It's so fabulous. It will, however, just so you know, when you cut it and it dries pretty well, some of these dry quite well, but it will come in and then you will look around and you will notice thousands of tiny little black dots all around where you brought it in because it will drop seed like crazy.
How does it behave in the garden itself?
It's not thuggish in my experience, but most of them and most of these really good ones grow so tall that they will start flopping in every direction you can imagine. So there's some sort of staking generally needed. I think most flower growers are containing it in some sort of netting situation. I just kind of go in there and, throw a bamboo stake in when I need to, when it's starting to encroach on a path somewhere. I mostly grow that in my raised beds that I have sort of reserved for cutting flowers. If I were to grow it in the garden proper, I would make sure to plan on staking it because it just gets way too heavy for its own good and it will just flop everywhere.
I have a question.
Just one moment, Leslie. Okay, there'll be time for you.
I raised my hand.
When you're trying to pair it with something, what could it stand up to? What would it pair well in a garden situation? Because I want to use it for bouquets, but it's really about the garden.
I think it would go well with any kind of shrub. Any kind of shrub with a woody structure, you could probably plant it near that. And it could lean on that a little bit. Anything just with a little bit of structure to it, because I do think it's going to lean over on anything else. Then you get your dominoes effect.
So you guys didn't know this was a call-in show, but I have a listener who hasn't grown a lot of amaranth and doesn't have a lot of experience with amaranth. Yeah, her name is...
Is her name Leslie?
Leslie from Virginia wants to know.
First-time caller, long-time listener?
Exactly. Could you just give a basic, because when I hear amaranth, I think that's that really cool plant that has that really cool, very dramatic common name of Love Lies Bleeding. And I think of this red sort of drapey sort of plume thing. But then I actually have grown a few and they're kind of like really robust astilbe flowers growing upright. So could we have a brief basic description on size, width? Am I making that up, or are they upright and floppy over flowers?
They are all of the above, and I'm going to guess that Marianne is going to be way better on all of the botanical names for these various types than I am. But there are so many different types of amaranth. There is that Love Lies Bleeding type, and there is this sort of drapey, tassel-y kind and I do like to grow those because if you have a big bouquet of flowers and you stick those in, it's gorgeous. And there is one called Dreadlocks, which I find very amusing. It's a very appropriately named, very amusing. Love those. But then there's also these ones that, like you were just talking about, Marianne, in the Baker Creek catalog, that are these sort of blooms. almost. And those tend to be more upright, but they do get very tall too. So those, those will do their flopping thing as well in most cases. I think there's a broad range of amaranth out there. There's also these amaranths that are typically grown for foliage too. There's some really beautiful foliage amaranths out there too. And I don't have a lot of experience with those. Amaranthus tricolor or something like that. Beautiful ones with a deep purple foliage. So there's a foliage aspect to it too that's quite
this
notable.
Is one that they've got Opapio, which is a reddish bronze green foliage with these red plumes. And my aim is to put this in the back of the sort of edimental beds in the kitchen garden, which I'm slowly taking out some of the old trial plants that I have that are not edible and putting in really beautiful edibles in there instead. So we'll see how that goes. I think I've always thought, no, because I just looked at them and thought that was going to be a staking nightmare. But
about how tall do they get? At what height do you're like, oh yeah, we got to get the stake out? Is that 4 feet, 5 feet? What's going on there?
Some of those, in particular, the ones that are sort of more of that love lies bleeding type, those 8 feet tall. I mean, those will get enormous. But these other ones, these sort of plume ones, 3 to 4 feet maybe.
Okay, yeah, I think that's the type I've grown, and they're generally quite hot colors. Yes, like magenta and orange and red.
Oh, they're all over the place. But if you like heat,
yeah.
There's even one that I grew. I think it's called Biscuits or something, and I wasn't sure if I would like it. I think I think that was a floret, something I saw on the Floret Flowers website, and it was very much something that was sort of destined for cut flower growers because it's very good in a bouquet. It's kind of a toasty brown color.
Oh, okay.
Great in bouquets, but terrible in the garden.
Yeah. It's like, what died over there?
It looks like a dead plant in the garden, but gorgeous. Put in a bouquet, especially with any of those sort of sunset colors. Just probably not the best garden plant.
So I've got to know, Erin, how your banana is doing. How is my little banana? Has he died? Has he gotten through another year? Have you given up? Have you put him out for adoption? What's happened to the banana?
Well, first of all, it has a friend. So there are now 2 bananas.
That's right. There's 2, I remember.
I just checked on them in the basement the other day. As usual, they're looking great. So for the original banana, this will be year number 3 or 4. And then last year I added the banana was lonely, so I added another one. I will say that the new banana, a lot more vigor. I do feel like it's losing vigor every year as I store it.
So am I. So, by the way,
right, I'm also losing vigor every year, so maybe that's the problem.
She had to wake up to say that, actually.
I'll just say this, just as a mention to the wonderful Tropical Plants and How to Love Them book. Even if I didn't store that banana, the show that I get out of those, and we're talking about the red Abyssinian banana, was Incente Ventricosum morale, right? Yeah. Even if I tossed that into the compost pile at the end of the year, it would be worth growing because I've been buying these plants. There's one garden center near me who sells them. And I've been buying these plants that maybe they're 30 inches tall when I put them in a pot, and they are 11 to 12 feet tall when I pull them out of that container at the end of my very short Wisconsin summer.
Wow.
I think the first one I bought was $35. I think the second one was maybe $40 or $45. Worth every penny, even if it never lived on beyond that. Now, I just do what Marianne tells me in that damn book. So I've been overwintering it in my cold, dark storage in my basement. And both are looking good. The newest one, though, far bigger. Now, I don't know if it's losing vigor or I am growing these in 2 very different spots. The new one was planted in a very large planter where it receives copious amounts of water, a lot of attention, and a lot of fertilizer because it's with other plants that want a lot of fertilizer. And the other one is planted in the ground where it gets probably a handful of like a time release fertilizer when I plant it and like water when I'm walking by. So it might not be an age thing. It might just be that the one that's in the container is far more coddled than the one that's in the ground. Like one of my favorite things is to have people come into my garden and go, what the hell is that? And they walk into my Wisconsin garden, they go, is that a banana, I say yes. And I love that moment. I love surprising people. I love having something that has no business being in this garden whatsoever. And so that one that I've been planting in the ground, it just brings me so much joy to see that stand there because it has no business being there. There's nothing about this garden that would say there should be this tropical plant right there. And here it is, still rising to at least 9 feet.
I think you're probably onto something with the way that you're cultivating them differently. Because I know that for me, I've had them in a large hugelkultur, which is like a sponge for moisture. And those always do beautifully and get wider and wider. But at the same time, when we've had some really bad droughts during the summertime, the ones that are in the regular soil that's amended, that gets rain, but not a lot of extra water, those will slowly shrink and actually develop quite a corm, a base, but very bulbous base, just to try to desperately to hang on to life. And so I've seen a lot of differences from the same species in my garden in a different place. I know that you have stored yours by cutting them in half as well, right?
I have, and this year I left it that main leaf standing. It's bent over in my basement because it's way too high. But I have left that standing this year to try that method. But I have
Awesome.
in the past, cut them right down to where the leaves are.
Like the bottom of a celery, like if you're cutting off the celery that you want to eat, like is that where you're cutting it basically?
I've been cutting it higher than that. I haven't cut them down that low,
Okay.
but I've been kind of cutting it to where the leaf is emerging. I don't know. Marianne's going to have all the technical terms for that part
I
of the
had
plant.
never wanted to cut mine to save them over the winter because I just wanted to keep that architecture. But last year, or no, it was 2 years ago, I ended up having to cut them in the spring because one had deformed. It had fallen over. I hadn't been paying attention because let's face it, my garage is a mess. And so it starts growing awkwardly and sideways. So the only way to correct that, because it had been a while, was to cut it at the base and let it sprout again. And that was a fascinating experiment to watch and to see what it did. And it got this thing that scabs over completely. And then all of a sudden from the middle is this opening, this bud coming up of these leaves. It was fascinating. And it also, what it did was it pupped, because Enseti don't tend to pup. They're not like Musa, like the bananas that we think of. They need to be damaged usually before they will pup. And then I cut some of those pups off, and I've got some more actually in my right behind me, little baby pups
that you're going to share with me.
Yes, actually, because I do not have room for any more bananas. And but that's the great thing about these plants, is that they're such spectacular plants that they can give you eye candy for as long as you want them, and then they're gone, and then you can bring them back if you want to, or you don't have to. They're just instant pizzazz.
Well, I will tell you what the most challenging part of that is, when I bring them out of their cold storage and I pot them up in their little pots, and they live in this room, actually. This is the only room with any decent light. Within about 2 to 3 weeks, they're touching the ceiling in here. And then it's like, okay, there's no room for human beings in here anymore. That doesn't win me a lot of fans in this house. And then we have to get them out the door. It's a remarkable thing. The second you expose those things to a little bit of light and a little bit of warmth, it is shocking at how quickly they just perk back up.
I think it's a really cool thing about the garden. Gardens are always changing, and they change year to year. And this represents a huge change when you have this canopy of huge, 24-inch long leaves. And that's gone. And what are we looking at underneath? I just think it represents a real new lease on what we're concentrating our design on if you have both looks. It's a challenge, but it's a wonderful challenge.
Yeah, it's the tropical fusion challenge. That's the thing. Not overwhelming, but trying to keep them both working together well so that they're both giving equally the temperates and the tropicals. I love them. I'm so glad that you're into bananas, Erin. It tickles my heart every time, even though I go, oh my God, poor Erin. She got another one. What was she thinking?
Well, and the worst thing is that now that I have two, I think actually you were one of the people who mentioned, two's not a great number to have of anything.
No, it's not. They are so stunning as a trio on a triangle. I've done that for a few years in different places. Every time I do it, I love it.
So we went bananas on the seeds, and then we went to bananas, and I think we're kind of done. We've taken up enough of dear sweet Erin's time. Yes.
Well, my wine glass is empty.
Yeah. So
that
that's an
must mean something.
indication.
Tragedy. So I'm on the hook to start amaranth and some snaps and some sweet peas this year.
I'm on the hook to say that I will, and I probably won't.
When I did it.
But I'll follow you guys on Instagram, YouTube, and all that sort of thing. I just wanted to say that, even though it's winter and it is, what did you say, 6A?
5B, 6A, yeah.
Oh my God.
Whichever one you believe. I mean, we've been colder than a 6A. I think our coldest temperature so far, true temperature, not wind chill, so far this year is like negative 16 or 17.
Oh yeah, that's totally 5B.
What does that feel like when you go outside? Do you run and turn around and like run back inside? How does that feel?
I got a heated jacket for Christmas. That's been a big game changer.
A little battery operated.
She doesn't care about her chakras, obviously.
Oh my gosh, is that messing with my chakras?
You see, she's concerned too, Leslie.
Wait till they find out. Wait till my chakras find out.
Wait till I find out what a chakra is, because I still don't know. All right. Erin, thank you so much for being on the Garden Mixer. You have provided so much information about seeds, also a little bit of couples therapy because we didn't bicker as much, don't you think, Marianne?
I think we actually got along way better in a threesome. Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Erin.
Well, thank you guys for having me. It is always an incredible pleasure to be with you and to have a virtual cocktail with you. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers.